Hello everyone, welcome to our SamuRai Lab, lesson 5. I hope that you've made it to lesson 5, right? We're still on the journey to becoming an R SamuRai, and hopefully you've made it this far. So let's get into it, right? I don't want to be taking a lot of your time, so let's get straight to it. I'm gonna be opening the script that we've been working on. So let's double click it. Okay, seems like the first double click didn't work. That's the pitfalls of doing everything live. Lots of things can go wrong. You will even make me make some mistakes every now and then. Um, but that's a good thing. Every mistake we make, we can learn something new, right? Both of us are here together, learning. So let me make this big. So this lesson 5 will be focusing on using groups, group on group, row-wise, summarize, and we'll sprinkle in there, I think, the use of n. I'll be going through some common mistakes that people do and don't understand, right? So even though I don't get to cover a lot of functions like other videos do, I do go into a lot of the common issues that you might face, and I think that's usually um, good for someone who's a beginner, right? They'll be like, oh, what is happening here? And by watching this video, you'll be able to look into that. So I've loaded the file here, our script. Remember the script here, we've been building it so that we have different Lego blocks, right? Pieces of code that we can reuse later. I'm gonna be loading the library using Control Enter to execute line by line. Loading the data frame, I'm gonna create data 1. I'm gonna be creating data 2. And I think in data 2, if we just look at it, I think it just has some, we did some changes here, but actually let's create a new one. Let's create data 3. And then let's use my first data frame. We're gonna be doing a pipe operator. Quick note there, there's also another, this is the Magritte pipe, but there's also, if you've been following or reading maybe another book, R for Data Science is a good book, you will find that they also have, I think it's like this. Is it like that? Yeah, I think so. Well, there's another pipe operator that you can use. So if you see something like that, actually, let's let's check it. It's just R, yeah, science. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one over here. So here, let's just look at summarize. There you go. Yeah, this. So if you're looking at this operator, this is also a pipe, right? But I think this is a base pipe in R. I think this was recently introduced. I won't be using it in any of the courses, but so that you know, if you, in case you see this kind of nomenclature somewhere else, it's basically working kind of the same. I think it has some differences that I cannot remember from the top of my head, but don't be discouraged if you see slightly different pipe there for things. So I'm gonna be going back. By the way, I really recommend this book, right? If you prefer to not watch my videos, right, and just want to learn directly from a book, this is the one I would recommend. R for Data Science, written by Hadley. Hadley is one of the persons who's done a lot of the packages that we're using, Tidyverse, etc. Of course, him and his team, right? No one can do that by himself. You see that there's also the collaborators here in the book. So really, yeah, this book, I really recommend it. With that parenthesis outside of the way, let's go back again to R, right? So I'm gonna do the pipe, and then here I'm gonna start by doing we're gonna go straight into group by group by from the package stapler, right? It says group one by one or more variables. And then here, I'm going to type the variables I want to group by. So I'm going to group by type, actually only by type, because that makes it very easy. So I'm going to type here, type, remember, it needs to be exactly as the name of the variable, type. And then after that, oops, that was a badly written pipe. After that, once you group data, you're able to work in that data with any of the other functions that we already know, and they will apply directly to that group. So you could apply filtering to each group, you could apply a mutate to each group, you could apply a range to each group. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be applying a mutate function to the whole group, to each group basically, to type. I'm going to type mutate, and then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna create a new column that adds value by group. I think that's pretty simple, right? So let's call it total. Do we have something named total? No, we actually do. Here. Huh. So what we're gonna do is group total, we're gonna call it. Group total. And then we're going to use a sum function. We're going to sum value. And we're just going to leave it, actually, we're just going to leave it like this. So let's see what happens. Right, let's execute data 3. It says it has 6 variables. Right, group total here. Actually, data 2 was the one we saw. Data 3 has group total, but you see something interesting here. You see that X has, it says NA in every single one of them. So, but that's weird, right? Because we have here X that has 10 and 30 and 40. So how come it's giving us NA? Well, that's because we forgot to add something that we need to keep in mind. And I strongly suggest and encourage you that every time you're using any function such as sum or mean or you name it, most of the time those functions will carry a way to tell it to ignore NAs. NAs are these ones, right? And when you add an NA with something, of course, I think I covered it in another video, you will get an NA. So that's the reason why we're seeing NA here. So even though that, yes, it worked for Y because Y didn't have any NAs, but X did have NAs. So we're going to get an NA because of that. So to fix that, we're just going to say na.rm equal true. And we're going to execute again this, and hopefully this time we'll get it right. There we go. Now we have 80. So this is very, very important, and you should please don't forget it. I'm pretty sure you will forget it, but anyway, I'll say it. If you're using one of those functions, please remember to add na.rm to ignore or remove the NAs so that you will get what you expect from the group. So that's basically any operation that we do will be applied to this grouping, right? We're going to be doing a sum function for each and every one of them. Now, most people think that, oh, okay, now, cool. I know how to group information now. I know how to group by things. By the way, you can group by many things, right? You can keep adding variables to group by. For example, you can group by type, and then you could also group by, let's say, word, right? So we add here word. I don't know if we're gonna get the same results, but let's try. Maybe we do get the same. Here we go. So we grouped also now by type and by word, right? So we get different results here. Let's go back to what we had before. So you can keep adding things to group by, variables to group by. Yeah, there we go. You can add as many as you want. For example, common examples would be to have grouping by date, grouping by type, grouping if it's by any other variable. For example, if you have engines, you could group by horsepower, you name it, right? So you can add as many variables for grouping as you want. And that's basically that's it for group. You know, there's nothing else. There's some things that you should of course keep in mind, and I'm going to show you what happens when you don't do that. Let's say that you have data 3 now. You did some operations on my first data frame with a group by and a mutate. Now let's say that at some point I want to create a new variable called data 4 that is taking data 3 and using a select, and I just want to select, let's say, letters. I just want to keep letters. If we execute this, we'll find something very unique, something that will make you realize that we didn't really finish properly using group here. So let's see how that looks like. There we go. Adding missing grouping variables, type. And this could have said many other variables. You see that it's plural, right? So it could also include many more variables in there. But in this case, we only group by one, we only group by type, so that's why it's there. If we had group also, let's say, by word, and we re-execute this, we would see now that it's adding missing grouping variables, type, and word. And why is it saying that? Because we tried to do a select on data 3. That means we dropped all the other columns except letters. But data 3 is grouped. And because it's grouped, it's basically telling, hey, you know, nice try, Victor, but you can't. You can't just forget about type and word. They need to be there because it's grouped. You told me that it would be grouped. Data 3 is grouped, right? So that's why data 4 will have type, word, and letters in it. So how do we get rid of this? Well, it's very simple. If you want, you should just write it down in your notebook. Every time you use a group by, and you finish using it, after you're done with your group, you should always finish with an ungroup. And this is very important because this will allow you to not have this kind of behavior later down the road, and it can be very costly. If you forget that you had something grouped, remember every operation that you perform on that data set will be under the assumption that it is grouped, and it can lead to some very nasty mistakes. So please remember, every time you use group by, remember to ungroup. If you don't, you'll have an error. Best case, you do something like this and then you end up noticing that, oh, it's still grouped, right? So please remember, every time you group and you finished using that group, remember to ungroup. So now if we re-execute data 4, let's see, ungroup. Okay, I executed ungroup now. Now if we re-execute data 4, we see that we only kept letters because we properly ungrouped our data. I cannot stress this. I know I've said it already like a million times. Every time you group and you finish using the group, please remember to ungroup. I know you will forget. I know you will forget because I forgot myself, and then I end up realizing, oh crap, I forgot to ungroup, and then I'll go back into my code and then I ungroup. I'm pretty sure you'll forget, but anyway, it's there now. Now you know. If you see something like this, now you know where the error is coming from. So you shouldn't be surprised when you see this happening to you. Now, there's also another special type of grouping. Oh, by the way, you can group by, when once you finish using a group, you can immediately use another group. So you could also do group by and then type another set of things, process your data, and then ungroup it. I'm not gonna be doing a group by. In this case, I will be doing a rowwise. And rowwise is a special type of grouping. It will basically mean that each observation, each row in our data frame will be treated as a group. Why would you want to do that? Well, it has very, very particular and specific applications. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll give you an example of what happens when you don't use rowwise in certain cases. So we have our data 3, and to keep it simple, let's just add 10 plus group total. So we're gonna do a mutate, and we're gonna say here total equal, we're gonna be adding value plus group total. And here we get again the dreaded NA, right? Because we did this operation is basically going row by row, 10 plus 80, 90, 15 plus 65, 80, NA plus 0, of course, NA, right? And at some point you're going to be like, oh, Victor, what should I do in this case? It's like, can I ignore the NA here? There's probably ways in which you can ignore it by using other functions, which I could tell you now, but I'll probably save them for another time. But another way in which you could do it, and much easier, would just be to say like, okay, I'm gonna use a rowwise, and rowwise, like I said, will make a group out of every observation, every row, and then you can use functions such as sum to apply rowwise. So now we have it like this: ungroup, rowwise, mutate, and instead of saying value plus group total, we're gonna use sum value group total na.rm equal true, execute, and now voila, we see na plus 0 is 0, not an na like we had before. So that's a very nifty trick. If you want to, if you know that you will be having some columns that potentially have an na in them, right? And you want to use a function such as sum, where you can just say, hey, na.rm equal true. One way of doing it would be to do that operation with rowwise and then add those different columns, just like I did over here. Rowwise is a special type of grouping. It doesn't have the name group in there, but you need to ungroup too after using it. Otherwise, you might end up doing again another mistake, such as the ones we had earlier. So actually, let's see what would probably, well, I don't know. Let's see. Select type. Oh, sorry, type doesn't exist like that. Yeah, in this case, it did allow us, but trust me, on the back end, it's still grouped. So after that, please remember to ungroup, and then you should be totally fine with that. You shouldn't have that error that we had earlier. Now we've seen group, ungroup, and row-wise. And this is going to be a very short lesson, by the way. We're not going to be taking the 45 minutes that we usually take. We just have one more, I believe, function to look at, and that function is summarize. So when you group by, usually you can use summarize to summarize by group, right? And we're gonna be doing that. So we're gonna group by, let's say, type. Again, I like. Actually, no. Let's do it by word. Let's change it a little bit. Let's make it exciting for you and me. We're getting wild here, guys. Group by, and then we're gonna do a summarize. You can write summarize with the English spelling, I mean US English spelling, or the British spelling. I choose to use the English spelling. So we're going to be doing summarize. Then here we're going to be count the groups, right? So we're going to be using this function. You see that I already had it ready here. And it says n gives the current group size. So we're going to be looking at the group size for each word that we have here. So we're going to say n, because n is a counter for groups, right? Like this. Remember, every time you use a group, remember to ungroup. And then you will see that our data frame will look very different from what we had before. And that's because summarize will only keep the group, the variable that we use for the group, plus whatever we created in that summarize, which was in this case n with a counter. So, and we can see that we have 3 apples, 3 bananas, 2 pears, and 2 pineapples. Let's check that. Actually, not from this one, sorry. Data here. How many did we say we had? 3 apples. So it's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and the rest should be fine. You know, the beauty of it, the beauty of working like this with R is that it's very difficult to make a mistake in different groups, because you already provided what you wanted to do for each group. So it's the only way you could be wrong was from the point in your calculation itself that you were applying to each group. That's where you can be wrong. You won't be wrong in some groups and not wrong in other groups. You'll be wrong for the whole thing if your calculation that you set up for each group was wrong. And this makes it very powerful to diagnose when things go wrong. You can see like, oh, okay, it's definitely something in the way I'm operating for each group, something in the way I created the calculation for that group. It cannot be anything else, right? So that's very, very, very good about R. I'm gonna be closing this one, and that basically brings us to the end of this lesson. Yeah, we did it, guys. We managed to finish in just 24 minutes. Very, very, very quickly. Now, before we go, I'm just gonna be, because you're gonna be keeping this code, let's quickly copy this, make another one called data4, and let's just remove the summarize from that one, just so you have another data frame there that has 2 different groups, and that still keeps the middle steps that we did for that analysis, so that you can do that. Of course, you can always just, you could comment all this out. And you can quickly by the way, you can quickly comment things out by pressing Command Shift C. I think in Windows. I don't know the equivalent of Windows. Maybe it's Control Shift C, or could be Windows key Shift C. Maybe. I don't know. Let me know in the comments which one is the way to comment, the shortcut for commenting on Windows. But yeah, if we do it like this, then data 3 should be more efficient in the processing because we're skipping all these steps that obviously we didn't need. So I'm gonna just gonna delete them. Okay. So my SamuRais, that's it. That's all for today's lesson. Remember, if you want to learn by yourself, of course, I would appreciate it if you learn with me instead of just going directly to learning from a book. But if you want to learn from a book, remember you can learn from R for Data Science. This is the second edition. This is, by the way, this is completely free. So I really recommend that you look into this. It's a very, very nice book and will take you through lots of things. We'll be going through lots of the stuff written in this book too. And I'll be giving you many of the mistakes that people do, so there's some value added in there, right? But yeah, I really recommend R for data science. With that said, it's the end of our class, right? Thank you for joining again. If you like the work that I do, if you like my classes, or if you have any comment to give related to how I do the classes, please leave some comments. If you do enjoy my classes, please keep coming back. There's still a lot more content that I will be creating. And also remember to tell your friends and get me some exposure there. We're trying to have more people learn R and get into working much more efficiently. Trust me, it'll change the way you work by a lot. You'll become much better, much more efficient at what you do, and it really is the gateway to basically endless possibilities. Things that you would never be able to do with Excel, you will be able to do with R. With that said, thank you for your time, and see you next time, SamuRais. Class dismissed.